High-security prisons are designed to be intimidating concrete fortresses built to contain society's most dangerous individuals. Within these walls, fear is a constant currency, and violence is a language spoken by all. Australia's Supermax facilities are no exception, housing criminals capable of unspeakable acts. Yet, even among the murderers and hardened career criminals, there is one name that commands a different kind of silence. One name that sends shivers down the spines of seasoned prison officers and high-ranking inmates alike. We are talking about a man known in these dark circles simply as the General. His real name is Matthew Johnson, and his life story reads like a grim manual on becoming the ultimate violent offender. He is a man defined by a strict, almost archaic loyalty to a brutal prison code, a career littered with countless violent crimes, and one specific act that etched his name into international headlines: the cold-blooded, calculated execution of Melbourne's Gangland Kingpin Carl Williams. But before he was the General, he was just a boy in a troubled home. Who is the man behind the headlines? And what specific tragedies led him down this dark, irreversible path? This is the life and crimes of Matthew Johnson. The signs of a turbulent future were etched into Matthew Johnson's life, almost from the very beginning. Born on August 9, 1973, in Dandenong, a working-class suburb of Melbourne, Johnson entered a world that would soon turn hostile. While many criminal profiles look for a single triggering event, Johnson's early years were a compounding series of tragedies that set the wheels in motion for a life dedicated to crime. The first blow came early. His biological father passed away when Matthew was just 6 years old. For a young boy, losing a father figure is devastating, often leaving a void that is difficult to fill. This early tragedy arguably turned Johnson's world upside down, removing a crucial anchor of stability just as he was beginning to understand the wanted world around him. His mother eventually remarried, perhaps hoping to rebuild that lost stability. But the man she chose could not have been a worse influence on little Matthew. His stepfather, Wayne Johnson, would later be described in court proceedings as an aggressive alcoholic who subjected Matthew to severe abuse. The home, which should have been a sanctuary, became a battleground of fear and unpredictability. Although his mother eventually managed to extract them from that toxic situation, her bad luck with partners continued. She married again, but this relationship ended in a bizarre and damaging betrayal, when the man ran away with his own niece, leaving Matthew and his mother alone once again to fend for themselves. With such a chaotic home life, it is unsurprising that Johnson's education followed a similarly destructive trajectory. It was a rollercoaster of failures and expulsions. He only made it through Year 7 before he was expelled from mainstream schooling. He was subsequently sent to St Kilda Community High School, an institution specifically designed for at-risk youths. However, even this specialized environment could not hold him. His formal education came to an abrupt end in Year 10, and he stepped out of the classroom and directly into the world of crime. By the tender age of 15, Johnson had his first serious run-in with the law. What started as minor offenses, characteristic of rebellious teens, quickly escalated into a full-blown criminal career. Before long, Johnson was not just acting out. He was stealing cars, breaking into homes, and carrying illegal weapons. Alongside this escalation in theft and violence, he became a slave to substance abuse, heavily using amphetamines, marijuana, and various prescription drugs. These substances likely fueled his aggression and dulled any hesitation he might have felt about breaking the law. However, the true turning point, the moment that cemented his identity, came at age 17. This was when he entered the notorious Pentridge prison for the first time. For most teenagers, the imposing bluestone walls of Pentridge would be a nightmare. For Johnson, it was a revelation. Rather than being deterred by the harsh conditions, Johnson found that he actually enjoyed the strict structure the prison system provided. It offered the discipline and hierarchy that had been missing from his chaotic childhood. Prison culture became the place where he finally felt at home, cementing his future not as a reformed citizen, but as a perpetually wanted criminal who thrived behind bars. When Matthew Johnson stepped back out into society, the prison system's attempt at rehabilitation had clearly failed. Instead of correcting his behavior, his time inside seemed to have acted as a masterclass in criminality. Upon his release, Johnson's illegal activities escalated rapidly, moving away from petty theft toward far more violent and organized offenses. He became deeply involved in brutal run-throughs, a terrifying form of home invasion targeting drug dealers. These attacks plagued Melbourne's southeastern suburbs, specifically areas like Keysborough, Doveton and Springvale. The sheer level of extreme violence and total disregard for human life displayed during these break-ins was eye-catching, marking Johnson as a man who had abandoned any semblance of moral boundaries. By 1994, at the age of 21, Johnson's notoriety had solidified. He was already known to local law authorities as a dangerous man, eventually sentenced for causing serious injury and affray. It became increasingly clear just how far down the rabbit hole Johnson had gone since his teenage years. He began to yo-yo in and out of prison repeatedly, but each stint behind bars only seemed to spur him on to commit more serious crimes upon release. In 1999, at 26, he was convicted of armed robbery, earning a 6-year sentence. This period of incarceration was pivotal. His violence was no longer reserved for the streets. While held in the Acacia unit of Barwon Prison, Johnson viciously attacked Gregory Brazel, a convicted murderer, adding 20 months to his sentence. He was becoming a figure feared by other inmates, and a significant problem for authorities across Australia. In the early 2000s, Johnson found himself a free man once again, yet his rap sheet continued to expand, encompassing gun possession and various acts of dishonesty. This escalation culminated in a shocking 2007 crime spree. Along with an unidentified accomplice, Johnson targeted a mother and daughter outside a McDonald's restaurant. He dragged the mother from her car at gunpoint while his associate punched the teenage daughter in the face. Later that same night they stormed a home, robbing a couple at gunpoint under the mistaken belief they were drug dealers, a throwback to his run-through days. When he was eventually found days later, in a railway station parking lot, Johnson had amassed an astonishing 167 prior convictions. Judge Jeff Chettle, presiding over the subsequent trial, did not mince words, describing Johnson as a real menace to society, with zero prospects for rehabilitation. Despite a lengthy sentence of 13 years, Johnson's most serious legal challenge arose while he was still serving time. In 2009, he faced a murder trial for the death of 18-year-old Brian Connolly. The prosecution alleged Johnson shot Connolly over a paltry $50 drug debt. Witnesses stated that after Connolly failed to return with drugs or money, Johnson shot him in the chest with a 9mm Luger, a weapon later found on Johnson during a routine search. The prosecution painted a grim picture of a cold-blooded killer, even alleging mutilation of the body. However, in a strange twist of fate, the jury deliberated for an exhausting 27 hours and found Johnson not guilty. He had dodged a life sentence, a victory that likely emboldened him and reinforced his belief in his own untouchability. Within the criminal underworld, while serving his existing sentence, Matthew Johnson's influence within the prison system grew to frightening levels. Emboldened by his acquittal in the Connolly case, he positioned himself as the enforcer of a strict, unwritten criminal code. He was willing to execute extreme violence against anyone who stepped out of line, viewing himself as a judge and jury behind bars. This adherence to his warped sense of order led to his most infamous act, a moment that would become one of the most notorious in the history of the Australian prison system. Carl Williams was arguably Australia's most well-known gangster, the face of the Melbourne Gangland Wars, serving a 35-year sentence for multiple murders. On April 19, 2010, the Kingpin met the General. The attack, captured with chilling clarity on the prison's CCTV, was a masterclass in brutality. Williams was sitting in the prison's recreation room, ironically reading a newspaper that featured a front-page story about himself. He never saw it coming. Johnson approached silently from behind, armed with the heavy metal stem of an exercise bike seat. In a swift, methodical motion, Johnson struck Williams on the head. The force of the blow sent the gangland boss crashing to the floor, but Johnson was not done. He continued to beat Williams with the metal pole without hesitation, ensuring the job was finished. In a final act of disrespect, he dragged Williams' lifeless body back to his cell. During the subsequent trial, Johnson attempted to claim self-defense, alleging that Williams had been planning to kill him using billiard balls in a sock. Justice Lex Lasry swiftly dismissed this claim as fanciful. It became evident that Johnson had killed Williams simply because the gangster was not falling into line with Johnson's view of prison hierarchy. Justice Lasry criticized Johnson's adherence to a meaningless underworld code, suggesting Johnson believed he had a special entitlement to kill. On December 8, 2011, Johnson was sentenced to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 32 years. Since that gruesome day, Matthew Johnson has earned the moniker the General, leading the prisoners of war prison gang within Barwon Prison. In a strange contrast to his violent reputation, he has recently found a creative outlet in poetry, writing raw verses that offer a glimpse into the mind of a lifer. His story remains a dark testament to the failures of the penal system, a system that took a troubled boy and, through years of incarceration, forged him into one of the country's most feared hitmen. Johnson's life is a stark reminder of how the prison environment can sometimes have the opposite effect to the one intended, creating monsters rather than reforming men. This brings us to the end of this case. Matthew Johnson's journey from a broken home to the top of the prison hierarchy is as tragic as it is terrifying. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Was the system doomed to fail him from the start? If you want more stories from the Australian underworld, please consider subscribing and liking this video. It really helps the channel grow. Till next time, take care.